The Inquisition. The Inquisition, officially known as the Holy Orders of the Emperor's Inquisition, is a clandestine organization that operates outside the conventional administrative structure of the Imperium of Man. Serving as the Imperium's secret police and primary intelligence agency, the Inquisition is tasked with rooting out all threats to the stability of the God Emperor's domain. These threats range from the corrupting influence of chaos, heretics, mutants and rebels, to assaults from formidable alien species such as the Tyranids, Orcs and Drukhari. Though many Inquisitors see themselves as accountable only to the High Lords of Terror and the Emperor himself, the reality is more complex. Inquisitors belong to a class of high-echelon imperial servants who wield significant political influence. This elite group includes imperial planetary governors, sector lords, Astra Militarum generals, space marine chapter masters, ecclesiarchy cardinals, rogue traders, adeptus mechanicus archmagi, navis imperialis lord admirals, adeptus arbites judges, and sector-level representatives of the adeptus administratum. Relations among these powerful figures are often rife with rivalry and bitterness, and even within a single faction, deadly conflicts can erupt over influence and control. For instance, imperial commanders frequently engage in fierce territorial disputes, and the Inquisition itself is not immune to internal strife. The notorious sigil of the Inquisition originates from the personal heraldry of Malcador the Sigillite, the regent of terror during the Great Crusade and the Horus heresy. Malcador was the second most powerful psyker in the Imperium, surpassed only by the Emperor. Under the Emperor's orders, Malcador founded the secret organization that would evolve into the various Ordos of the Inquisition at the onset of the heresy. The Emperor directed Malcador to assemble a group of inquisitive men and women to hunt down the Imperium's enemies, both internal and external. The Inquisition is divided into three major orders, known as Ordos Majoris in High Gothic, and numerous minor orders, or Ordos Minoris, each focused on addressing specific threats to the Imperium's survival. Ordo Malleus. Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus, along with their chamber militant, the Space Marines of the Grey Knights, are dedicated to confronting and defeating the forces of chaos and other existential threats to the Imperium. Ordo Xenos. The Ordo Xenos and its chamber militant, the Astartes of the Death Watch, defend the Imperium from the myriad alien threats beyond its borders. Ordo Hereticus. The Ordo Hereticus, supported by its chamber militant, the devout battle sisters of the Adeptus Sororitas Orders Militant, combats all internal human threats to the Imperium, whether they arise within its organizations or across its worlds. The Inquisition operates without a formal hierarchy or central leadership, allowing each Inquisitor the freedom to pursue the mission of humanity's survival as they see fit. Inquisitors of similar mindset often form groups to address mutual interests or concerns, aligning themselves with one of the various inquisitorial ordos. These ordos expand and contract in response to the galaxy's shifting threats. For instance, the Ordo Malleus grows in response to increased demonic activity, while the Ordo Hereticus expands during times of internal heresy. An Ordo may remain inactive for years, only to become relevant again when its area of focus resurfaces as a significant threat. However, certain dangers, specifically those posed by demons, xenos and heretics, are constant. Thus, the Ordos dedicated to combating these threats, the Ordo Malleus, Ordo Xenos and Ordo Hereticus, are known as Ordos Majoris, maintaining a perpetual vigil. Numerous Ordos Minoris also exist, addressing more temporary threats to humanity. Association with an inquisitorial ordo is not a matter of absolute allegiance. The Ordos are as unstructured as the Inquisition itself, and Inquisitors are free to involve themselves in matters concerning any ordo. There is no strict division of responsibilities, and many Inquisitors argue that compartmentalizing the enemies of mankind would be a grave mistake. Threats often overlap, such as a mutation plague stemming from an alien infestation or a surge in psychers heralding a demonic incursion. Being part of an ordo signifies a field of interest rather than a formal rank. When an Inquisitor identifies with the Ordo Malleus, for example, it indicates their focus on demonic matters. This declaration requires no approval, as Inquisitors recognize no superiors except those they choose to acknowledge. Any hierarchy within an ordo is informal and based on respect rather than authority. Titles like Grand Master are marks of esteem earned through accomplishments and knowledge, but they do not confer absolute power. Inquisitors sometimes form a conclave, a temporary association to address a threat too formidable for one inquisitor. A respected inquisitor usually initiates a conclave, pooling the skills, knowledge and resources of their peers to combat major threats like an orc wah, a massive demonic incursion or widespread heresy. While conclaves typically involve members of a single ordo, it is not uncommon for multiple ordos to collaborate if the situation demands it. Although conclave members rarely take direct military command, they ensure that the mission's focus remains clear during battles. An inquisitor may oversee military actions, stepping in to take control if necessary, but they generally prefer to work behind the scenes while the Emperor's armies engage in combat. The Holy Orders of the Emperor's Inquisition, as it is formally known, is an enormous organization tasked with interpreting the divine will of the Emperor. This duty is inherent to the Inquisition's nature, regardless of the specific ordo to which an agent belongs. Interpretations of the Emperor's will differ widely within and beyond the Ordos Majoris, leading to the formation of various factions. These factions are highly political, composed of individuals who share common belief systems, regardless of the Inquisition's primary goals, whether it is to combat heretics, witches, demons, or aliens. While numerous factions exist, certain dominant belief systems shape the Inquisition's political framework. Discord between different ordos or conclaves is rare because each has a clearly defined area of interest. However, disagreements among inquisitors within the same ordo are more common, often focusing on the methods used to combat their enemies. Some inquisitors believe in using the enemy's weapons, such as employing sorcery against demons, while others see such methods as corrupting and contrary to the tenets of the imperial creed. These disagreements are often framed as conflicts between radical and Puritan philosophies, though the reality is more nuanced. The distinction between the two is subjective and relative, based on individual perspectives. Few inquisitors label themselves as radical or Puritan, but they are quick to categorize others. For instance, an Ordo Malleus inquisitor might condemn a colleague as radical for using chaos law to bind a demon, not recognizing that others in the Ordo view them as dangerous for merely consulting forbidden texts. Similarly, some Ordo Xenos members see learning an alien language as risky, while others employ Xenos mercenaries without hesitation. Given the Inquisition's structure, there is no higher authority to appeal to when an inquisitor believes a peer has strayed from the righteous path. If enough evidence is gathered, it can be presented to a conclave to seek a judgment of excommunicate traitorists. More often, inquisitors must resolve matters themselves. Intervening in another's quarrel is risky, as every disagreement can sow division within the Inquisition. It is preferable to keep disputes personal, allowing genuine threats to take precedence. However, some conflicts escalate into outright battles between inquisitors and their agents. Many inquisitors adhere to a single certainty of belief, avoiding doubt that could paralyze their actions. To question one's methods is to risk being lost in a sea of possibilities, afraid to act for fear of making the wrong choice. The ideological clash between radical and Puritan isn't a simple matter of right and wrong, as such clear-cut definitions rarely apply to an inquisitor's work. Radical methods can save millions, just as Puritan rigidity can doom them. Unfortunately, the outcome is often unknowable until it occurs. An inquisitor might use the chaos sorcery of the Grimoire Malefact to close a warp rift, risking their soul to chaos and potentially becoming the very threat they fear most. Puritans argue that such risks are reckless and unnecessary, preferring slower methods that might endanger numerous worlds. If the radical approach succeeds without consequence, it appears justified. But if it leads to greater harm, the Puritan approach seems vindicated. It's no surprise that most inquisitors adhere to a single, unwavering belief, avoiding the paralysis of doubt that comes with considering too many possibilities. To question one's methods is to risk being immobilized by indecision, fearing the wrong choice. Eisenhorn, Born in 198 on Dakir's world, Gregor Eisenhorn was taken by the Black Ships at a young age and eventually became an acolyte of Inquisitor Hapshant. He studied alongside fellow apprentice Titus Endor and was promoted to the rank of full Inquisitor in 222 at the remarkably young age of 24. His first successful prosecution was that of the heretic Lemaitre Sire. Eisenhorn's career was stable and competent, but in 240 he was drawn into events that would alter his life's course. That year, Eisenhorn successfully ended the menace of the mass murderer Murdin Iclone, an investigation notable not only for bringing Godwin Fishig and Elizabeth Beckwin into his service as acolytes, but also for setting him on the trail of Pontius Glor and the Necrotuk. Following leads from the Iclone investigation, Eisenhorn became entangled with a heretical cabal on the world of Gudrun and was briefly captured and tortured by one of its members, Gorgone Locke. The cabal was eventually dismantled by a full inquisitorial purge led by Inquisitor Voke. Eisenhorn managed to recover a device known as the Pontius from the cabal, which contained the encoded brain engrams of the infamous and long-dead heretic Pontius Glor. One of the cabal's schemes involved arranging his resurrection. Eisenhorn held Pontius Glor captive, regularly interrogating him before ultimately deciding to have the Pontius device incarcerated by Magos Bura of the Adeptus Mechanicus. This decision would significantly impact Eisenhorn's future. Pursuing further leads from the Cabal Purge led Eisenhorn into one of his most renowned investigations, the affair of the Necrotoik, a tome of chaos knowledge. Eisenhorn tracked the survivors of the heretical Gudrun Cabal to a colony world inhabited by the Xenos Saruthi. The Saruthi had obtained a copy of the Necrotook and translated it into their own language, creating two versions of this powerful chaos tome and a translating tool. Eisenhorn quickly found and destroyed the human Necrotoik tome written in High Gothic. Some radical inquisitors deemed this a heretical act and condemned Eisenhorn for it. However, the majority of the local inquisitorial conclave, dominated by Puritans, supported Eisenhorn's decision to burn the tome, outvoting the radicals. Thus, Eisenhorn was spared from censure and was instrumental in planning a raid on the Saruthi homeworld, during which the remaining tainted items were destroyed. During this attack, Eisenhorn first encountered Cherubale, a powerful demon host who would go on to plague him and the Imperium in later endeavours. In 241, Eisenhorn delved into the investigation of what appeared to be ritual murders on Sameter. Initially suspecting a chaos cult, he soon discovered the perpetrators were actually former soldiers of the Astra Militarum. These ex-members of the Sameter 9th Infantry Regiment had been driven to madness by the horrors of war and had turned to ritually killing regular citizens. Supported by the arbitrators of the local Adeptus Arbites, Eisenhorn managed to corner and eliminate these fanatics in an abandoned, decaying building. During the ensuing firefight, Eisenhorn lost his left hand to a skilled former sharpshooter. Although offered a bionic prosthetic, he declined, opting to manage with a fused stump until he could have a vat-grown hand grafted 2 years later. In 312, Eisenhorn's closest friend and acolyte, Midas Betancourt, was killed by the heretic Fader Thuring during an investigation. Thuring escaped, and Eisenhorn vowed to look after Midas's infant daughter, Medea. When she came of age, Medea followed in her father's footsteps, joining Eisenhorn's retinue as his pilot. 26 Terran years later, in 338, Eisenhorn began the investigation for which he would become most renowned across the Imperium, the elimination of the heretic inquisitor Kixos. This investigation followed the disaster of the Thracian Primaris triumph, where Eisenhorn's interrogator, Gideon Ravenor, was grievously injured. The atrocities seem to have been orchestrated to free several Alpha Plus class rogue psychers from Imperial detention. Eisenhorn's pursuit took him to Econ, where he and his team, disguised as mutants, uncovered inquisitorial collusion in the rogue psyker scheme. Inquisitor Lyco was found in the company of the demon host Cherubale. Startled by Cherubale's reappearance, Eisenhorn redirected his focus to this creature, leading him to Cadia where he encountered another demon host, Profanaiti, and discovered connections to the missing radical inquisitor Kixos. However, Eisenhorn's investigation was derailed when he was arrested by Inquisitor Ozma on charges of consorting with demons. After escaping, he was declared an outcast by the Inquisition and forced to operate as a rogue for the remainder of the investigation. Eisenhorn spent some time with his Adeptus Mechanicus associate Magos Bura on Cinchare, consulting with his prisoner, Pontius Glor. During this period, he also defeated a chaos cult on the world and acquired master-crafted force weapons. Eisenhorn next assembled a small strike team of 3 other inquisitors, and together they tracked down and confronted the renegade inquisitor Quixos. Eisenhorn himself dealt the fatal blow to Quixos, recovered the heretical tome, Malus Codicium, and banished both Profanaiti and Cherubale to the warp. At the investigation's conclusion, all charges against Eisenhorn were dropped. In 345, Eisenhorn secretly summoned the demon Cherubale and trapped him in the physical universe for interrogation and study. By 355, he successfully managed a minor warp incursion of demons on Gudrun. The year 386 marked Eisenhorn's vengeance for Midas Betancourt's death, but it came at a significant cost. The defeat of heretic Fade Thuring resulted in the loss of several of Eisenhorn's associates, put Bequin into a coma, destroyed his personal starship and guncutter, and forced him to ally with the demon Cherubale. To control Cherubale, Eisenhorn performed an improvised chaos ritual, sacrificing the naive Puritan Inquisitor Bastien Vervuc. This dark act was a pivotal step on Eisenhorn's path to damnation. Shortly after, Eisenhorn fell victim to a meticulously planned attack by Pontius Glor, who had escaped the Inquisition's captivity and sought to torment his captors. Eisenhorn's life was shattered, including his career, as Inquisitors Ozma and Haldane once again declared him an outcast. With his organization in ruins, his body broken, and much of his retinue dead, Eisenhorn turned to his former pupil, now full Inquisitor, Gideon Ravenor. With Ravenor's help, Eisenhorn tracked down Pontius and eliminated him for good. However, the Pontius affair depleted more than just Eisenhorn's physical resources. It also eroded his resistance to using radical methods against Chaos and the Imperium's other enemies. From then on, Cherubale became his constant companion. After the Pontius affair, Eisenhorn largely disappeared from public view, despite his outcast status being rescinded once again by the Inquisition. He surfaced only occasionally to recruit new acolytes or confer with past associates, such as warning Gideon Ravenor about the chaos cult known as the Divine Fratery. Later members of the cult speculated that Eisenhorn might have been killed while fighting their followers, as he was inside a building they bombed and subsequently vanished from their psychic foresight. The truth of his death remains disputed. However, recently it became clear that the Inquisitor was on a secret mission. He went rogue for quite some time and spread rumors about his possible demise so that the heretics might drop guard. And this time, Eisenhorn was aiming at uncovering a great conspiracy amongst the Astra Militarum, a group of high-ranked commanders corrupted by the whispers of Slaanesh. Some time ago, a regiment discovered a planet, Thanotus 4, with an ancient temple dedicated to She Who Thirsts, and failed to report that, swayed from the righteous path by the unholy whispers promising unimaginable power in exchange for secrecy. Eisenhorn commands an elite retinue, hand-picked over the years and travels. One of his loyal comrades is Aemos, the savant whose vast knowledge is unparalleled. He was able not only to uncover the traitorous plot, but also to find out about a secret meeting between the traitor commanders and a Slaanesh emissary from the Emperor's Children Legion. Eisenhorn decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and when the time was right, set a course to Thanatos 4. Emperor's Children. The Emperor's Children, also known after their fall as the Lords of Profligacy, are a traitor legion of Chaos Space Marines who devote themselves entirely to the Chaos god Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure. Initially they were the proud 3rd Legion of Astartes of the Imperium of Man. The Emperor's children were uniquely honoured among the ancient Space Marine legions, bearing the Emperor's name and his personal icon, the Palatine Aquila, as a symbol of their martial perfection. This rare honour, directly granted by the Emperor, set them apart and gave them fewer reasons than any other legion to betray him. Their accolades and the respect they commanded left little doubt that they embodied the Emperor's vision for the Legiones Astartes, noble in action and appearance, excelling in all things, strong, civilized, firm in purpose, and unwaveringly loyal. From these heights they descended into treachery, becoming the lowest and vilest of creatures, enslaved by pride and hedonistic desires that no natural power could satisfy. Now, much like their counterparts, the World Eaters, the Emperor's children exist only as scattered, autonomous warbands of heretic Astartes within the Eye of Terror, each dedicated to their own corrupt, hedonistic, and often murderous pursuits. They are known for their outlandish mutations and surgical alterations, gifts from Slaanesh designed to make them more perfect in the eyes of their twisted patron. The Emperor's children now live solely to surpass every extreme and experience every possible sensation. Entirely under the thrall of Slaanesh, the Dark Prince of Chaos, they were once the legion of Primarch Fulgrim, striving for perfection in all they did and counted among the most dedicated of the Emperor's followers. The infant Primarch of the Emperor's children, Fulgrim, grew up on the bleak, dying world of Chemos, a human mining colony that had fallen to decay and decline as Old Night engulfed humanity's domains. Isolated from surrounding systems, Chemos's industry had gone silent, with mines replaced by reclamation plants and vapor extraction facilities that barely sustained the dwindling population. Within 50 standard years of his arrival, Fulgrim had risen to lead Chemos, dreaming of rediscovering and rebuilding the wonders of lost ages. His vision expanded to encompass not just his homeworld, but all of humanity, a dream he could only fully pursue when the Emperor came to Chemos. At that time, Fulgrim's Space Marine Legion, sharing his genetic inheritance, was not a resplendent host like those of his brothers, but a mere 200 battle brothers due to a catastrophic accident during the gene seed's development. As a result, Fulgrim and his warriors had to be integrated into another legion until their numbers were restored. They were assigned to the Lunar Wolves, Horus Lupercal's legion, where Fulgrim could not have had a better companion to master the arts of warfare. From the earliest days of their service in the Great Crusade, the emerging Third Legion was renowned for its relentless pursuit of perfection in all its endeavours. This relentless drive, coupled with their extraordinary defence of the Emperor during the Proximan Rebellion, earned them the unique honour of bearing the imperial aquila on their chest armour granted by the Emperor himself. Recognizing the Emperor as the pinnacle of the perfection that Fulgrim aspired to, the Third Legion was named the Emperor's Children, a title they retained even after the devastating events of the Horus heresy. It is often said that Fulgrim's insatiable quest for perfection in every aspect of his life ultimately led him and his legion into the clutches of Slaanesh. The precise details of Fulgrim's fall from grace are largely lost to history, but it is clear that Horus played a key role in appealing to Fulgrim's refined sensibilities and fueling his increasingly disturbing quest for unattainable heights of sensation. As a Primarch gifted with a post-human physique and intellect, Fulgrim was capable of mastering any endeavour. After conquering every strategy and tactic of war, he turned to more esoteric pursuits, immersing himself in creative arts such as poetry and sculpture. However, as Slaanesh's insidious influence took hold, Fulgrim's passions darkened, and his desires grew ever more extreme. Ultimately, acting under Horus's influence, Fulgrim attempted to persuade his brother Primarch, Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands Legion, that factions within the nascent Imperium were conspiring against them. This led to a bitter confrontation between the once close brothers. Although Ferrus survived, Fulgrim's reward was damnation, setting him firmly on the path that led the Emperor's children to side with the traitors at Istvan V and ultimately to the Siege of Terra. During the Siege of Terra, The Emperor's children did not participate in the direct assaults on the Imperial Palace's fortifications, which were defended by the Praetorian of Terror, Rogel Dawn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists Legion. Instead, while the World Eaters and other traitor legions launched relentless assaults on the palace, the Emperor's children laid waste to the surrounding city and outlying regions of the throne world, slaughtering untold thousands, perhaps even millions of the Emperor's subjects in an orgy of unrestrained cruelty. It has been suggested that the Emperor's children used the unprecedented violence of the Siege of Terror to harvest vital fluids from their victims, creating an abominable stimulant to grant them access to previously unheard-of heights of sensation. Ultimately, the Siege of Terror was lifted when the Emperor slew the arch-traitor Horus, and the Emperor's children, along with the other traitors, were driven from Terror. Leaving a trail of desecrated worlds and violated populations in their wake, the Emperor's children retreated to the Eye of Terror with the other traitor legions, embarking on a new and devastating series of wars against their former allies among the forces of chaos in search of stolen mortal slaves to serve as their playthings. The history of the Emperor's children following the defeat of the traitor legions at the Siege of Terror is largely shrouded in mystery. The fate of Primarch Fulgrim remains one of the greatest enigmas. Some believe that Fulgrim attained apotheosis during the Horus heresy, becoming a demon primarch. Others claim that he retreated to a demon world of his own creation, where he still rules, indulging in debased extremes of sensation and experience unimaginable to mortals. Those who revere Slaanesh often regard this mythical place as the holiest of sites, dedicating their lives to obsessively searching for it. In the days before the Horus heresy and the Emperor's children corruption, the Third Legion accepted nothing less than perfection in all their endeavours and worked ceaselessly to perfect their military operations. Each and every Space Marine trained every waking hour for his assigned task, whether it be as a foot soldier, driver, gunner, scout, or sniper. Every aspect of battle was analysed and used to their advantage, from terrain and weather to deployment or reserves. Nothing was left to chance. In combat, the Emperor's children were as brave as any Space Marines who ever lived, sustained not merely by the example of their peers, but by a deep individual belief in their duty. They fought to the best of their abilities in all conditions, whether the battle was a massive planetary assault or a simple patrol. It was widely believed that no Space Marine of the Emperor's children had ever been routed in battle. Similarly, the Third Legion was highly demanding of the forces allied with it. Any signs of hesitation or inefficiency in the Imperial Army units serving alongside the Legion or even amongst their brother Astartes was not tolerated. The main guiding principle of the Legion was to lead by example, which was ingrained into every fibre of the Emperor's children. They had little patience for any other regimen. To the Emperor's children before their fall from grace, war was a matter of perfection, incarnated in violence, intent, and action. The Third Legion took great pride both in its excellence on any battlefield and its ability to systematically replicate any tactic or strategic deployment it needed and execute them flawlessly on command. Of the innumerable such formations and tactics the Emperor's children operated, one that found favour with the Legion's praetors, looking to achieve faultless victory, and thereby glory in the eyes of their peers and Primarch, was the Maris Scara, or Killing Cut. Named after one of the most difficult strikes in the lore of the pan-Europic dueling cults before Terran unification, it called for a precisely timed, rapid-moving feint designed to engage an opponent's guard, so that a second, invariably fatal blow could be dealt against it, which there could be no defence from. Laying a trap. Upon arriving on Thanatos 4, Eisenhorn decided to gain intelligence on the meeting site and scout the area. He gave orders to each member of his retinue: Fischig, the former Arbeits officer turned loyal bodyguard, Elizabeth Beckwin, the beautiful and deadly pariah, and Harlan Nail, the ex-mercenary with a deadly aim. Eisenhorn brought with him Adeptus Arbeits and an elite Astra Militarum troops he chose for the mission. On paper, justice should be swift and deadly. Traitorous commanders met with the emissary in secrecy. They did not bring a large force. Who was meeting them on an Emperor's Children side was, however, still unknown, even to Emos. The Inquisitor had received intelligence that a meeting between the traitors and an emissary of the Emperor's Children was to take place in the ruins of an ancient cathedral. It was here that Eisenhorn planned to spring his trap. Gathered in a hidden chamber within the cathedral, the traitorous commanders awaited their dark benefactors. The air was thick with anticipation and the stench of heresy. The leader of the traitors, Colonel Garvus, a once loyal officer, now turned to the worship of Slanesh, paced restlessly. Inquisitor Eisenhorn watched from his concealed vantage point, his mind sharp and focused. The moment had come to spring the trap. He reached out with his psychic powers, signaling his team to prepare for the attack on his command. Eisenhorn did not plan to use his psychic abilities to assault foes. He directed all his power to ensure swift communication between his elite strike force squads and additional concealment to remain hidden until the very moment of the attack. The cathedral in which a meeting took place, a once grand structure now twisted by the influence of chaos, stood as a monument to the fallen glory of Tyrantis IV. The traitorous commanders, each bearing the marks of their corruption, gathered in the central hall. The stained glass windows depicting scenes of the Emperor's triumph now cast eerie shadows of torment and decadence. Colonel Garvus, his eyes burning with unholy fervor, addressed his fellow traitors. "Tonight we cast off the shackles of eternal servitude. The Emperor's children have promised us power and immortality to shape our own destiny. We shall ascend to greatness, free from the chains of the Imperium." As he spoke, a figure clad in ornate Baroque power armor stepped from the shadows, as if materialized from thin air. It was a surprise, if not a shock, even to Eisenhorn, but not because of how the figure slipped through the guard posts undetected, but because of whose figure it was. Before Eisenhorn's very eyes was Lucius the Eternal himself. Lucius the Eternal is the champion of Slanesh, and a Lord Commander within the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion. Known by many titles, including Soul Thief, Fulgrim's Champion, Blade of Eons, and the Scion of Chemos, Lucius's legend is one of twisted devotion and insatiable ambition. Millennia ago, Lucius was a proud member of the Emperor's Children Legion, following his Primarch Fulgrim across the galaxy in the name of the Emperor. His sole focus was the art of close combat with the sword, and he bore his battle scars as badges of honor. Over time, Lucius equated pain with success, and by the time the Emperor's children had succumbed to Horus's rebellion, he had etched deep scars across his face, head and chest, creating a maze of irregular patterns that distorted his features. As he descended into madness, whispers in his mind drove him to commit increasingly extreme acts, fueling his obsession with becoming the perfect swordsman. Even as the Third Legion embraced chaos worship, Lucius continued to distinguish himself in service to his Primarch. His incredible speed and skill made him a formidable opponent in the gladiatorial contests Fulgrim held during the Legion's travels. Lucius was nearly invincible, an unstoppable force until he met his match, and was finally slain by the infamous Lord Commander Sirius. However, Slanesh refused to let such a promising protégé fade into oblivion. In the weeks following his death, Sirius's artificer armor began to warp and transform. His hair fell out, and dark lines appeared under his flesh, eventually pushing through his skin as a maze of scar tissue. Lucius emerged completely, leaving only the screaming, writhing face of Sirius, forever trapped within Lucius's armor. Now, Lucius roams the galaxy as an arrogant and unstoppable slaughterer, unable to be truly killed. Anyone who slays him and feels even a moment of satisfaction or pride will slowly and painfully transform into Lucius. The tortured visages of those who once killed him writhe within his armor, providing him with endless gratification. His ornate saber and sentient whip have tasted the blood of champions and kings across the galaxy. Leading his debauched warband of Emperor's children with unwavering confidence, Lucius welcomes death with the same passion he inflicts upon his foes. During his youth on the dreary planet of Chemos, Lucius stood out like a rare gem in the rough. His immense talent allowed him to excel in any endeavor he chose, and his boyish good looks remained unspoiled by the harsh environment of his homeworld. Lucius quickly drew the attention of influential patrons. His sponsored education gravitated towards the arts of war, for the act of killing fascinated him. However, it wasn't large-scale strategy or tactical analysis that excited him. Instead, it was the personal triumph of duels, contests and sword bouts that captivated young Lucius. Only in these arenas could a true warrior be celebrated for his skills. Only there could he savour the undeniable glory and approbation of victory. Lucius's insatiable hunger for personal glory twisted his entire life around this pursuit, bending it like hot metal around the singular goal of excellence. By the time he reached adulthood, he had already surpassed the classical styles taught by the weapon masters of Chemos. Throughout his studies, his rapier claimed the lives of dozens of beggars and brigands that Lucius later claimed had attacked him. He inflicted hundreds of scars on lesser pupils, occasionally taking an eye or a finger in what he called accidents. His character was repeatedly called into question, but no one could deny the brilliance of his skills. As he matured, Lucius redefined the term prodigy. He fought his peers with a dismissive contempt, toying with them like a cat with a wounded bird before delivering the scar that signalled their defeat. Against his tutors, however, he fought with relentless intensity, focusing every ounce of his being on victory. During the annual contest held by the elders of Chemos, Lucius's flawless swordsmanship caught the eye of a hulking stranger lurking in the shadows. In the final round of the Golden Sword, there was a disruption in the tourney lists, and Lucius found himself facing a renowned champion twice his age. Though Lucius proved to be a superior warrior within minutes, a knee to his stomach knocked him to the ground. Winded, he reeled and stumbled out of his opponent's reach long enough to catch his breath. With a frown of concentration on his youthful face, he then proceeded to dismantle his opponent, limb by limb, vein by gushing vein. The champion's supporters were outraged by the callous dispatch of their leader and stormed the arena en masse. It was then that the true bloodletting began. Lucius would have met a grisly end if not for the intervention of the shadowy stranger observing the contest. Both the youth and the stranger vanished before the tournament's conclusion. Lucius was never seen again among the people of Chemos. The stranger, a ranking sergeant in the 3rd Space Marine Legion, had been so impressed by Lucius's raw talent and determination that he offered the youth a single chance to join the Legiones Astartes. Lucius seized the opportunity eagerly. Thus began the military career of a young warrior who would eventually epitomize all that was evil and twisted in the Emperor's children. Over the course of many Terran millennia, Lucius the Eternal led his motley war band across the galaxy on the trail of the deadliest opponents his network of admiring torture cultists can locate for him. He intends to hunt down the best melee fighters in the galaxy and beat them in one-on-one combat or die in the attempt. Over the course of several Terran centuries, he defeated the Drukhari Archon Vresk in Cursed Shardom, the Emperor's champion of the Black Templars at Veilfate, and the Orc warboss Two Claws at Octarius Sigma. Eventually, on a nameless moon near Damnos, Lucius was cut down by the shape-shifting Necron duelist known only as the Phasing Sword. Not even the Necron's body of living metal could prevent the Slaaneshi Chaos champion's strange possession curse from taking hold, however, for the undying Necron took a cold pride in its victory, and that was the seed of its undoing. Lucius was reborn inside his killer within solar days, the Xenos warrior's necrodermis body drizzling away like molten metal to reveal the twisted swordsman as arrogant and maniacal as ever. And now he stood in front of the Inquisitor in all his might. He bore a gift to the eager commanders, anticipating reward for their treachery. "You shall be elevated," Lucius said, his voice dripping with malevolence. "But first you must prove your devotion. Drink deeply from the chalice of Slaanesh." Lucius produced a large, ornate chalice filled with a dark, viscous liquid. The commanders, their minds clouded by their own greed and desire, took turns drinking from the chalice. The liquid burned as it went down, searing their insides with an otherworldly fire. They convulsed, their bodies writhing in pain as the dark substance took hold. Colonel Garvus was the first to succumb, his eyes rolling back in his head as he fell to the ground, convulsing. The other commanders followed suit, their screams echoing through the cathedral. Lucius watched with a cruel smile, his eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. "You see," Lucius said softly, almost to himself, "the gifts of Slaanesh are not given freely. They must be earned through suffering and sacrifice." As the commanders lay writhing on the floor, their bodies began to change. Their skin bubbled and warped, their bones cracking and reshaping. Some grew additional limbs, others sprouted grotesque mutations. Their minds, already fragile from their fall to chaos, shattered completely. The transformation complete, the traitorous commanders rose to their feet, now mindless abominations driven only by pain and madness. Lucius laughed, a cold, heartless sound that echoed through the cathedral. With a casual wave of his hand, Lucius summoned his power. The air shimmered and crackled with raw warp energy. The abominations, once commanders of the Astra Militarum, were now little more than puppets, their strings pulled by the whims of Slaanesh. Lucius's eyes glowed with an unholy light as he directed the abominations to turn on each other. The cathedral echoed with the sounds of their frenzied violence, flesh rending and bones breaking as they tore each other apart in a gruesome display of chaos and brutality. Colonel Garvus, now a hulking monstrosity with multiple eyes and grotesque limbs, roared in agony and fury. He lunged at one of his former comrades, his claws ripping through flesh and armor with ease. The other abominations followed suit, driven by an insatiable hunger for destruction. Lucius watched with a twisted delight, savouring the chaos he had orchestrated. His laughter mingled with the screams of the abominations, a symphony of madness that filled the cathedral. The once proud commanders, now reduced to mindless beasts, were utterly consumed by their own corruption. However, pain of betrayal and false hope fueled Garvus' resistance. He gathered last drops of his will and attacked Lucius, only to be instantly skewered on his blade. Lucius held his sword arm high so that agonizing abomination's legs could not even reach the ground. "I told you we'll be elevated," Lucius smirked, finishing off the creature of chaos. For a second there was complete silence. A moment after, driven by the telepathic command, several squad of Tempestus Scions, Adeptus Arbites and members of Eisenhorn's retinue attacked Lucius, hoping for a swift and decisive strike. These elite soldiers, trained to face the worst the galaxy had to offer, moved with precision and discipline. "Engage and eliminate the heretic," Eisenhorn commanded. The Tempestus Scions, clad in their carapace armor and wielding an array of weaponry, opened fire with disciplined volleys. Bright lances of last fire streaked toward Lucius, but the champion of Slaanesh moved with inhuman speed, his form a blur as he weaved through the barrage. The Adeptus Arbites, armed with shotguns and power mauls, advanced in tight formations, their riot shields raised. They had faced riots and insurrections, but nothing could have prepared them for the ferocity of Lucius the Eternal. Lucius's blade, the blade of the lyre, sang through the air with deadly precision. He moved like a dancer, his strikes a blend of grace and brutality. The first Tempestus Scion to face him barely had time to react before Lucius's sword sliced through his armor, severing his head from his shoulders. The headless body crumpled to the ground, blood spraying in a crimson arc. With a roar, a squad of Scions charged, their special-issued power bayonets crackling with energy. Lucius met them head-on, his blade moving faster than the eye could follow. He parried their attacks with ease, each movement a masterful counter. One by one the Scions fell, their bodies broken and lifeless. Their role was to buy precious seconds for the Arbites, to form a ring of shields around Lucius, so they may contain him on the battlefield, while other Scions could target his weak points with precise shots. However, the Arbites fared no better. Lucius's speed and skill were beyond anything they had ever faced. He ducked under a swinging power maul, his blade thrusting upward to impale the Arbite's officer through the chest. He spun, ripping the sword free and decapitating another Arbites with a backhanded slash. Eisenhorn saw his elite warriors fall, dealing almost no damage to the enemy. In the end, the Inquisitor did not expect to face the legendary champion of chaos. The force was insufficient and destined to fail. Eisenhorn's retinue fought valiantly. Fischig, wielding his shotgun, fired round after round at Lucius, but the shells seemed to have little effect. Bequin's aura disrupted Lucius's connection to the warp, but his martial prowess was unaffected. Nail took aim, his sniper rifle seeking an opening, but Lucius's movements were too unpredictable. Lucius burst with laughter. "Show yourself already, or are you just going to watch your men slaughtered like pigs?" Lucius mocked Eisenhorn. Not because of his words, but in desperate attempt to turn the tide of battle, the Inquisitor engaged Lucius, his force sword glowing with psychic energy. The two clashed, blade against blade, in a duel that shook the very foundations of the cathedral. Eisenhorn's strikes were precise and powerful, but Lucius was faster, his counters and ripostes flawless. Lucius was severely outnumbered, and yet it felt that Eisenhorn and his soldiers were always left on the defensive. As the battle wore on, it became clear that Lucius was toying with his opponents, savouring their fear and desperation. He laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest soldiers. "Is this the best the Imperium can muster?" Lucius taunted, his blade cutting down another scion. "Pathetic." Eisenhorn, bloodied and battered, refused to give up. He summoned all his psychic strength, launching a devastating mental assault on Lucius. The champion of Slaanesh staggered, momentarily dazed, but it was not enough. With a roar, Lucius broke free of the psychic attack and renewed his assault. One by one, Eisenhorn's retinue fell. Fischig was impaled on Lucius's blade, his body lifted and tossed aside like a rag doll. Bequin, her aura weakening, was struck down, her lifeless body crumpling to the ground. Nail, out of ammunition, tried to engage Lucius with a combat knife, but was swiftly disarmed and decapitated. Eisenhorn, the last of his team standing, faced Lucius with grim determination. However, Lucius saw the desperation in Eisenhorn's eyes. "Come, Inquisitor!" Lucius whispered, his voice dripping with sadistic pleasure. "Let us end this!" With a final desperate charge, Eisenhorn lunged at Lucius, his force sword aimed at the champion's heart, but Lucius was ready. With a fluid motion, he sidestepped the attack and drove his blade into Eisenhorn's side, the force of the blow lifting the Inquisitor off his feet. Eisenhorn gasped, blood spilling from his wound as Lucius leaned in close, his eyes filled with cruel amusement. Lucius twisted the blade, causing Eisenhorn to cry out in pain. With a casual flick of his wrist, Lucius threw the Inquisitor to the ground, leaving him bleeding and gasping for breath. Just as Lucius raised his blade to deliver the final blow, a series of precise, silenced shots rang out from the shadows. The rounds, blessed and designed to pierce even the most formidable armour, struck Lucius in rapid succession. The champion of Slaanesh staggered, his eyes widening in shock and rage. Eisenhorn smiled. "The trap has sprung." Lucius, wounded but far from defeated, turned to face this new threat. "Another coward hiding in the shadows," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "Come forth and face me!" The Vindicari assassin did not respond with words. Instead, he moved with blinding speed, his rifle switching to a pistol and blade. The duel between Lucius and the assassin was a dance of death. Each strike and counterstrike a testament to their skill. Vindicare would never be able to duel Lucius. However, the latter was seriously injured by the surprise shots from the sniper, and Eisenhorn, seriously wounded but still alive, was directing all his psychic might to empower the assassin, augmenting his strength and speed. Despite his injuries, Lucius fought with the ferocity of a cornered beast. His blade whirled and struck with lightning speed, but the assassin was always one step ahead, evading and countering with lethal efficiency thanks to the psychic augmentation, mental commands, and Eisenhorn's precognition. The battle between Lucius and the Vindicari assassin raged on, the cathedral echoing with the sounds of clashing blades and gunfire. The assassin's relentless assault began to wear down even the mighty Lucius, his movements becoming slower and more desperate. He realized he has to finish off the Inquisitor and easily deal with Vindicare right after, but when he lunged at Eisenhorn, he saw him smiling yet again. This was all part of his desperate, daring but successful plan. Opening himself for a split second to kill Eisenhorn was a grave mistake, as the Vindicare assassin was waiting for this moment to deliver the final blow. The assassin, understanding the timing was critical, executed a flawless maneuver. He feinted to the left, drawing Lucius's blade away, then pivoted and drove his own blade deep into Lucius's side. The blade, crafted from a rare and potent anti-warp material, burned as it pierced Lucius's flesh. Lucius screamed, a sound of pure agony and fury. He tried to retaliate, but the assassin's precision was unmatched. A final shot from the Exitus pistol, aimed directly at Lucius's head, ended the duel in a flash of blinding light. Lucius the Eternal, champion of Slaanesh, fell to the ground, his body convulsing as the warp energy within him dissipated. The once unstoppable warrior lay defeated, his reign of terror brought to a sudden and brutal end. "Not so eternal, after all," said Eisenhorn. As the dust settled, the survivors of Eisenhorn's retinue and the remaining Tempestus Scions and Adeptus Arbites emerged from their positions. The cathedral, once a place of despair and corruption, now stood as a testament to their sacrifice and determination. Eisenhorn, gravely wounded but alive, was carefully lifted by Bequin, though weakened, used her pariah abilities to stabilize Eisenhorn's psychic backlash. The Inquisitor approached the assassin who kneeled before the Inquisitor. They looked each other in the eyes. Eisenhorn placed his hand on Vindicare's shoulder. "For the Emperor," said the assassin. He knew what was coming. Lucius, known for his power of resurrection through the flesh of his killer, could not be allowed to do so once again. Eisenhorn delivered swift execution with a precise bolter shot in the head. As Eisenhorn's ship ascended into the void, the Inquisitor reflected on the cost of their victory. The galaxy remained a dark and perilous place, with countless other threats lurking in the shadows. But the battle against chaos was never truly over. It was an eternal war, fought across the stars, in the hearts and minds of all who served the Emperor. In the halls of the Inquisition, the tale of Eisenhorn's victory on Thanatos IV became a whispered legend, a beacon of hope in a galaxy shrouded in darkness. And as long as there were those who stood ready to fight, there was hope. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But there is also courage and faith, and the unbreakable will of humanity. And so the story of Eisenhorn and his retinue continued, their names etched into the annals of history, their deeds a ray of light in a galaxy filled with darkness.